We're so glad you've joined us on the ERLC podcast to explore how the Bible addresses important cultural issues pertaining to life, religious liberty, marriage and family, and human dignity, and how we can walk in wisdom for God's glory and for the flourishing of our neighbors. If you're enjoying this podcast and find it helpful, please leave a review wherever you listen. This will help more people find and benefit from what we're learning together. We are grateful for the time you take to join us for these conversations.
You're listening to the ERLC podcast. Hey man, we apologize. I saw your call coming in and I cut it off and I was like, who's calling me right now? I'm trying to do a podcast with Benjamin Watson.
Yeah, that was me. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way.
Oh man. All right, here we go. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of the ERLC podcast, where every week we're talking about our work here at the ERLC and focusing on what Christians need to know about the things going on in the world. I'm Josh Wester, and with me on the podcast today are my co-hosts, Lindsay Nicolet.
Hello, everybody.
And Brent Leatherwood.
Hello.
Well, hey guys, it's good to be back with you for another week of podcasting. This is a very special episode because, hey, we're talking to a guy who has won a Super Bowl. So it doesn't really get bigger than that for us, especially when the guy we're talking about is Benjamin Watson, who is not only, a former professional athlete, played in the Super Bowl. That's kind of like the pinnacle of an athlete's career, but he's a rock-solid believer. And so if you're not familiar with Benjamin Watson, we look forward to sharing this conversation with you later in the show. But Lindsay, so that we can get into it, tell us what the ERLC has been talking about this week.
Well, I wanted to kick off the discussion about this week with a very important video that we shared at the beginning of the week in order to emphasize the value of life and all of life. So we were able to partner with a production company and share the moving story of Pearl Brown and her family. So this is the opening paragraph just describing what this video is about. Choosing life is a decision that goes beyond refusing to have an abortion. It can be easy for the church to advocate for the lives of unborn children, but forget the sometimes difficult implications for mothers and families who choose to protect the lives of their babies rather than cling to what is comfortable or normal. So this is the story of Eric and Ruth Brown, who had 2 children, and then their third child, Pearl, was born with significant medical needs, significant special needs, and they chose to give her life and to take on all of the difficult implications of that. And if you have a chance, I would go on our site and search for Eric Brown's talk at one of our Evangelicals for Life conferences. He gave a powerful talk about Pearl's life, about their family, about how the Lord had used these hardships to bring them deep joy in Him and to witness His faithfulness. So we just wanted to put together a video that would celebrate Pearl's life, would celebrate the hard decisions that they made, would give people who are walking through this a place to land so that they don't feel alone. And so I just would like to encourage you to go to our site, to click on the link in our show notes, and to check out Eric and Ruth's story about their precious little girl, Pearl.
I could not agree with that more. The Brown family they have an incredible story. They're incredible people who have walked through a really, really difficult situation. And the whole time they have been just an example of what faith in God looks like in the midst of difficult circumstances. But more than that, they have been an example of what it looks like to value and honor human life, to uphold human dignity in those cases when it is really hard, when you are facing severe challenges. Their daughter, Pearl, who we are so confident is now in the arms of Christ, they honored her life and loved her. They walked through an immense number of challenges and struggles as they were trying to care for Pearl. And the whole time, they as a family modeled what it looks like to be committed to valuing human life, to upholding human dignity, to honoring those who are made in God's image. And though Pearl has gone on to be with Jesus, Eric and his family will live on with these memories and this legacy that they loved her and showed her the love of Christ throughout all the days of her life. It is such an inspiring and incredible story, and we would really encourage you to go and check it out.
Yeah, it was really our privilege to get to participate in this and get a little window into their family and their stories. So again, check that out on our website. Check out Eric's EFL talk, and then he's also a photographer, so you might be interested in checking that out on Instagram. He has some great photos, shares his work, and it's really stellar work. So moving on, I wanted to talk about an interview that we did with someone that we talked about last week. So Roland Slade, a pastor in California, Capital Conversations, our podcast out of DC, hosted an interview by him discussing how churches and civic leaders can work together. Well, we actually were able to do a interview article on our website this week where he goes into a little bit more detail. We're able to ask questions like, how would you counsel church leaders to talk to their civic leaders? Tell us a little bit more about your story. What advice would you give? How has the SBC in particular been helpful to you during these times? So he was so kind to answer these questions. I think it'll really encourage you, especially if you are a pastor who is just confused during this pandemic and during these COVID times and these restrictions. If you are feeling discouraged by social media, again, Roland and his church members, and also the civic leaders that worked with him are just stellar examples of how to do this, and Roland and his church, how to do this to the glory of the Lord. And then finally, I wanted to talk about an article by our very own Russell Moore, president of the ERLC. We have a series that we've started, which is a primer series about Christian ethics. And Dr. Moore did the introduction article. And then after that, there will be articles highlighting various aspects of Christian ethics or various issues. And the articles will highlight a small book that can serve as a help to our readers. And so Dr. Moore actually kicked this, the book portion off. And his article is titled, Why Life Should Be Viewed as a Miracle, the little book by Wendell Berry that reshaped my vision of Christian ethics. And is a really good, poignant article and just about the wonder that we should have regarding life, the wonder that we should have regarding the universe and how the Lord holds all things together, how humans are not merely machines, how the universe is not merely random. So I really appreciated his reflections here. And this is how Dr. Moore closes out his article. More than providing talking points about specific points of ethics, Life as a Miracle helps us to rethink our starting place. The world is not an accident. Human beings are not things. Wisdom requires affection, not just information. Life is a miracle. In that sense, this little book, like the hummingbirds on its cover, is far more important than its size.
Lindsay, I'm really glad you mentioned that piece. This primer series that we're doing is really meant to be kind of an introduction to people to building a library of ethics. This is kind of an interesting concept because we're spending a little bit of time in each piece introducing whatever topic inside of Christian ethics we're dealing with. And then as we are walking through, most of the piece is about a specific book, in this series. And so we're kind of recommending to people, here's how you build a basic library of Christian ethics. Get these books, read through them. Most of them are very approachable and easy to understand. And they're supposed to help you begin to have categories to think through different kinds of ethical questions that Christians are going to face. And obviously, Dr. Moore is a premier Christian ethicist in the United States, and both his kind of framing article that we released last week, as well as this first article in the actual series, they're fantastic, and could not commend them more strongly.
Yes, so pay attention. Each week, we'll drop a new article about a different issue. We'll highlight a different book. And we're really excited about this series and how it can serve church leaders and just Christians around the world. So that's just a small sampling of what we've had going on our site. But Brent and Josh, that's your look at what's happening on ERLC.com.
Hey, thanks for that rundown, Lindsay. And Brent, that takes us to This Week in Culture. So tell us what's going on.
All right, so we begin this week in Washington, D.C., but not with the Supreme Court hearings that we will talk about later, but in fact, something that happened late last Friday. So Baptist Press is reporting a federal court ruled late last Friday the District of Columbia has likely violated the religious freedom of Capitol Hill Baptist Church and therefore cannot prevent the Southern Baptist congregation from meeting outdoors with proper safety measures in place. And listeners will recall that we've done a number of content pieces at ERLC.com, and we've highlighted this on the show a couple of times, that Capitol Hill Baptist is engaged in this dialogue with the city of Washington, D.C., and so now it has come to a resolution here in this courtroom. So the report says the ruling prevents D.C. from enforcing its current pandemic rule that restricts religious gatherings to 100 people or 50% of capacity, whichever is less, whether they are held indoors or outdoors. Capitol Hill Baptist filed a lawsuit September 22nd after the DC government rejected its latest request for a waiver, despite the church's commitment to require social distancing and the wearing of masks outdoors. Capitol Hill Baptist expressed gratitude for the court decision. Our very own Travis Wuso, the ERLC's general counsel and our vice president for public policy, stated, quote, "This is a critical step in their efforts to safely and wisely meet." He described the opinion as excellent and went on to say the judge made note of both the church's theological convictions and their efforts to work with the city before even pursuing litigation. And honestly, it's that last part, all the steps that this church has taken to work within the parameters of the process that was laid out by the DC city government, and working to establish connections with local officials to let them know that, hey, we want to partner with y'all and we want to meet responsibly. All of that was just met with ambivalence by DC, and so it led to this. And we are thankful for this resolution. So, Josh, Lindsay, what do y'all think about this?
Honestly, Brent, I think that Capitol Hill Baptist has, for us, modeled what it looks like to try to navigate this pandemic well when you do run into challenges that threaten this fundamental right of religious freedom. So we think that in many, many places, this has not even been an issue. But for Capitol Hill, they tried. I mean, they were incredibly willing to try to work with their local government officials. They just encountered a significant amount of opposition, and their request was incredibly reasonable. I mean, it is the kind of thing that reminds me that the way that they have handled this, a lot of people who are not believers have commented on how reasonable their approach has been here and what they are asking for. The details laid out here are not, they're not requesting permission to totally flout and ignore all of the guidelines or safety protocols. They're simply asking to practice these very same safe measures that they are practicing right now in the state of Virginia inside the district. And so this injunction granted by this judge, which said that they're very likely to win their case on the merits, was incredibly encouraging, because it's just one more sign that religious liberty is something that, because of our Constitution and in the United States, we're incredibly grateful to have.
Staying in Washington, so now focusing on the Supreme Court hearings that took place, the Associated Press is reporting healthcare played a starring role in Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings this week before the Senate Judiciary Committee, as Democrats sought to highlight an issue they want voters to consider on Election Day. During this week's hearings, Barrett maintained her view that it would be inappropriate to comment on the national healthcare law or other cases that may come before her as justice. Several senators asked their questions while in isolation via Zoom, and the hearing did have one lighthearted moment with technical problems, but they weren't related to anyone joining online. They actually happened because the mics in the hearing room themselves, they went out for an hour on Wednesday, and that prompted Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham to note that the technician who fixed it, that guy needs to be paid a whole lot more money. And so that was certainly something that they had to work around in the midst of the hearings. Ultimately, Republicans appeared undeterred and will likely be successful in their effort to have Barrett confirmed before the election, which is just 3 weeks away. It looks like the final confirmation vote is scheduled to take place on October 22nd. So, Josh, Lindsay, what stood out for y'all about these hearings?
Well, I think what maybe stood out to me was that in a year when we are I think, addicted to the roller coaster ride we've talked about before, or addicted to the bad news takes or to the outrage that's happening on social media. We didn't have really a lot to be outraged about. And also, what stuck out to me was just Amy Coney Barrett and just her poise. She's just good under pressure. And of course, I like her judicial philosophy, as Josh pointed out last week. Probably the second time in my life I've used that phrase. To me, she's just an excellent nominee for the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, I agree with you. Like, it was pretty stunning. At one point, she was asked to hold up, what it was that she was referring to or what was on the piece of paper in front of her, because we've seen previous nominees come with like books and pages of documents in order to refer to them. And she held up basically a blank piece of white paper. It had the Senate Judiciary Committee, I think the letterhead at the top, but it was blank. And she, for 2 days, subjected to an unknown number of questions, was just able to, off the top of her head, refer back to cases and principles and policies and all kinds of things that were just stored in her own memory. And it was no wonder for me that the longer she spent in front of the cameras, the more her approval numbers went up. People were just impressed with her because she's an impressive person. And even when she was being pressed really hard about different parts of different rulings she's had in the past or different parts of her philosophy or what she might do in the future, she was so poised under that pressure and was never appeared flustered, never appeared frustrated, and was exactly what you would hope for in someone who is going to have such an important job in helping to order our society.
The other thing to mention, too, is the brief civics lesson that Senator Ben Sasse gave, which I wasn't watching these live, and then I saw the clip. And so I've started watching it, and I need to go back because I don't remember my civics class. But it was great. I just love Senator Sasse. Anyway, you can tell he's an educator at heart. And so that was a highlight as well.
That's right, Lindsay. Former college president, Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska. And he gave a huge part of that thing you're referring to. He talked about the difference between politics and civics. And he talked about how civics is a thing that we're all supposed to be able to agree upon. Like, civics is what is not contested or debatable, and politics is what we do with our disagreements and how we work those things out. And so I'll try to find that and drop it in the show notes so that you can refer to it. I actually watched it with my 7-year-old, and it was really instructive and edifying.
All right, so turning now to the coronavirus front, and y'all, there's just a lot of news in this area, and frankly, it's not good. So NBC News is reporting that European leaders have been put in a panic by surging coronavirus infections in the region. So, for example, France has declared a national state of health emergency, and the United Kingdom appearing to approach a second national lockdown after a surge in cases there. And Germany is introducing further rules to restrict the spread of the virus. Europe now has over 7.2 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, according to the World Health Organization. And here at home, CNN is reporting that, as predicted, the U.S. is now grappling with a new coronavirus surge, one that could overwhelm hospitals, kill thousands of Americans a day by January, and leave even young survivors with long-term complications. I thought that this quote in the article that we'll link to was interesting. Dr. Peter Hotez, who is a dean of medicine at Baylor, stated that, quote, "We went down to the lowest point lately in early September, around 30,000 to 35,000 new cases a day. But now we're back up to about 50,000 new cases a day, and it's going to continue to rise." He pointed out that the fall and winter surge that everyone is worried about, it's really now happening. And he said, quote, "And it's happening especially in the northern Midwest, and the northern states are getting hit very hard. Wisconsin, Montana, the Dakotas. But it's going to be nationally soon enough." And that is not good for those of us who have obviously been dealing with this pandemic. And there was a lot of noteworthy individual high-profile positive cases this week to just remind us of the severity of the pandemic. Axios is reporting that First Lady Melania Trump disclosed on Wednesday that her and President Trump's son, 14-year-old son, Barron Trump, also tested positive for COVID-19 in a statement detailing her experience with the virus. And something we can all be thankful for, Barron Trump, he exhibited no symptoms and has actually since tested negative. So we are certainly thankful for that. Axios also highlighted the fact that Senator Kamala Harris, she's going to pause her campaign travel through Sunday after her communications director tested positive for the coronavirus. The outlet notes that the campaign said that the vice presidential nominee, who has tested negative for the virus, was, quote, not in close contact with the aide, but under CDC guidelines and out of an abundance of caution, and in line with the way that the campaign has treated the virus, they will pause their travel through Sunday. And then the world of college football was rocked by news that the University of Alabama's head football coach, Nick Saban, he has tested positive for COVID-19, CNN reported on Wednesday. The news comes just 3 days out from the Crimson Tide's critical conference showdown with the University of Georgia that is slated for Saturday. Saban said in a statement, quote, "I found out earlier this afternoon that I had tested positive for COVID-19. I immediately left work and isolated at home. At this time, I do not have any symptoms relative to COVID." So obviously folks are wondering what effect that will happen, or obviously folks are wondering what effect that will have on Saturday's game. As a fan of the University of Tennessee, I'm actually more interested in seeing what effect that has on next week's game when the Crimson Tide come to Knoxville. But we will save that for next week's podcast.
That is a mouthful of coronavirus news for us. It makes me feel, I was starting to feel kind of like I had 3 heads or something, because my family, we haven't gone back to church yet, being pregnant and just different things. We're just a little more cautious. I'm starting to feel a little weird, kind of like an outlier. But this reminds me that it's not gone yet. I think that we've been trying to pick back up normal life as a society, and I think it's going to pull back a little bit more, which is going to be hard for people, but thankfully it's not going to last forever, even though it feels like it will. I think maybe we're more prepared this time. We won't go out and buy all the toilet paper in the world, and won't like totally abandon grocery stores and things. We'll know how to handle ourselves, so that's good. But yeah, it just seems like we're going to be hunkering down a little bit for this cold weather, and just praying that a vaccine comes soon.
So, Lindsay, that's a great segue to the next portion. So the Washington Post, they're reporting that pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson became the second vaccine maker to halt late-stage trials this week as investigators probe whether a participant's undisclosed illness may be linked to the vaccine. That follows Tuesday's announcement by Eli Lilly that they were pausing trials of a closely watched vaccine because of similar safety concerns. But experts note that the pauses of these trials of vaccines actually demonstrate that safety is working as intended. So a lot of folks have been concerned about these trials being really sped up and the federal government pushing all kinds of trials to try and see if we can get to a vaccine. I agree with that. This is something that those of us who are watching the development of vaccine can really take heart in, that this is the way that these trials are supposed to work, and pause if necessary to determine whether there are any problems with the vaccine. And I'm hopeful that this will give folks confidence, because as Axios is reporting, according to the latest Gallup poll, Americans' willingness to get a coronavirus vaccine has dropped to 50%, which is a dramatic 11-point fall from the previous month when they tested this. So we actually need this boost in confidence. The decrease is due to many Americans losing confidence in the approval process for the vaccine. According to Gallup, folks won't take an FDA-approved vaccine right now because of political statements attributed to President Trump and others surrounding the vaccine. Since early August, young adults have been consistently more positive about taking the vaccine than middle-aged and older adults. And I thought this last point was really interesting. Parents of minors are less likely to vaccinate themselves than non-parents. So that's certainly very interesting. What do y'all think? All three of us are parents, but Josh, Lindsay, I'm particularly interested in what y'all think as parents.
Personally, I'm hopeful that a vaccine will come on the market that we can all have a lot of confidence in. I really, in the same way that I'm praying for a very clear election result, I'm also praying for a vaccine to come that is not surrounded by a lot of questionable data or even, subjective opinion. I hope that when there is a vaccine available and on the market for us, that it's going to be the kind of thing that people have a great deal of confidence in and that we can avail ourselves of. I think it's really sad to see something like this be politicized, and I really hope that that these pharmaceutical companies and researchers and scientists that are working on this, I really hope that their focus is on right where it should be, on creating a vaccine that can help people and making it available when it is ready, and as soon as it's ready, but not before.
All right, moving over into the world of politics. And y'all, this is just a jaw-dropping number. Former Vice President Joe Biden, who is the Democratic nominee for president, he announced on Twitter midweek this week that his presidential campaign has raised a record $383 million in 1 month, in the month of September. And now you might ask, well, what was the previous record? Well, that was also from Vice President Joe Biden's campaign that had raised $364 million in August. So he is in a place now where he has about $430 million cash on hand for these last 20 days. As someone who worked in politics, that is a sum that honestly I couldn't even fathom having injected into any campaign that I ran here in the final stretch run. Many folks believe that this record amount is attributed to the results of the first presidential debate that took place last month and the fallout from it. So they think that folks were driven to Biden's campaign because of what they saw play out. Presidential campaigns were due to announce their totals by next Tuesday. So obviously, Vice President Biden's campaign, they felt very strongly about this news, and so they wanted to get it out immediately. We still don't yet know what President Trump's campaign raised, but I'm sure that we will know that here in the next few days. Speaking of debates, the second presidential debate is officially off. So last week it was announced the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates confirmed that the October 15th face-off would be scrapped. The decision was made. So this is kind of the TikTok, more or less. The committee announced that they would hold a virtual debate through, a platform like Zoom, where each candidate would be asked questions in a town hall format. President Trump immediately came out and said, no, that's not a debate. That's not worth my time to participate in. And then later, Friday afternoon, when this was announced, Vice President Biden said, well, we won't participate then either, and we'll schedule our own town hall. So they scheduled that to take place on Thursday with ABC News. Well, then it came out that President Trump's campaign had announced that they will do a town hall with NBC News right at the same time as the Biden town hall event. So as someone remarked on Twitter, wouldn't it be just great if the networks got together, scheduled those dueling town halls to be at the same time in the same place, and then we would actually get the town hall debate that we had all expected?
Like everything else that's happened this year, I just want to throw up my hands and scream. It was not surprising when we saw that they decided not to participate in a debate that was going to be held over Zoom. Frankly, I think that the American public would be fine. They don't have any more presidential debates this year. I would like to see them debate in Nashville. That would be a cool thing. And so they're dueling town halls. It'll be interesting to see which one is, has more viewers. But man, yeah, I agree. I agree with whoever said that they should just tell them to show up in the same place. I think that would have been great because look, That's effectively what they're doing. I mean, what is the difference between separate town halls in the same town hall? We could just get a little more, juxtaposition, but they didn't ask me.
All right, returning to Baptist life, and this is something that we always want to affirm when we get the chance when other entities are doing good work. So Baptist Press is reporting that in a move that brings together New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and the North American Mission Board, they are coming together to approve a partnership to launch a church planting center on the New Orleans campus. The impact of the new center will resonate well beyond New Orleans as church planters are trained and sent out to serve throughout North America. The approval of this came during a trustee meeting for the fall meeting of the New Orleans trustees, and that took place on October 13th. So we are obviously really keen on highlighting when our sister entities do great work, and that is certainly what is going on here with New Orleans and NAM. And so we're thankful that they will be training up church planters because we certainly need them. And finally, in sports, Axios was reporting this, that the Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, led the team to a Game 6, 106-93 triumph over the Miami Heat in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. It is the Lakers' record-tying 17th NBA championship. And so this brings to an end this very bizarre NBA season. But honestly, it probably affirms the plan that the commissioner and other officials within the league developed to, once the season was postponed because of COVID, to bring the teams back together in just one place and, essentially bubble them so that way it would lessen any sort of possibility of any of the players contracting COVID-19. And it seems to have worked. And so we are thankful to see one of the major sports leagues bring their play to a successful end.
And it just brings back the age-old ERLC office debate, Jordan or James?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lindsay. And obviously, Jordan is clearly the greatest of all time.
For sure.
But often it's the younger fans who maybe did not get to see Jordan in real life. They're just saying LeBron because he's a great player. But man, Michael Jordan, he was something special. And so I think that debate is really just more of younger folks speculating on who might be the greatest player of all time. All right. So with that, Lindsay, Josh, that's your look at this week in culture.
So this is a first for the ERLC podcast and something we are very excited about. We are going to talk to a former professional football player, Benjamin Watson, who played for a couple different teams during his NFL career, including the New England Patriots, with whom he won a Super Bowl. So it's exciting today to talk to a Super Bowl champ. But one of the reasons we're most excited to talk to Ben is because of the fact that he has made no secret. He has been a fantastic ambassador for the gospel, both through his NFL career and now as his career in public life. He is very outspoken on pro-life issues, on issues related to fatherhood, and we are incredibly excited to talk to Ben today. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And as we're getting started with the podcast, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself? And while you're at it, would you mind telling us one thing that you think God is teaching you in this season of life?
A little bit about myself. Well, I am a father of 7. And so God is always teaching me patience.
Wow.
Which is good. But I think specifically right now in this time of life, I think with so much, that's just different, I guess, in this year of 2020 than has been. Look, nothing surprises God. We know that. But we also know that as human beings, we are affected by the things that happen around us. And there's a verse in Psalm 16:8, where David writes, "For I've continually set the Lord before me, because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken." And I think that verse for me kind of been a rallying cry or a motto, I think, this year, because there's so much that has shaken all of us when it comes to our health and our finances and jobs and people losing loved ones to COVID. And then, oh, by the way, there's a political upheaval, all that's going on with that. kids are at school, and some of them are at home. And so there's this kind of dynamic there that people aren't used to. And there's just so much that is going on. I think that's been different this year that we have all, and at least we've been shaken, just in the norm. And so, what God has really, I guess, been impressing upon me is the fact that, like David says in the Psalm, when we set our eyes on him and we set him before us, and we also put him in that place of authority, which is the place of the right hand, so that he directs our life and our path. It's not that we won't be affected by what goes on around us, but we will have a foundation that won't shake, because when he is our pillar, when he is our rock, no matter what goes around us, we'll be affected. Our emotions will be caught up, but our true self and our true identity and our trust won't be shaken because it's rooted in him.
That's such a good reminder, Ben. And I love Psalm 16, and verse 8 is a good reminder that I need to set to memory again and put into practice. So this podcast focuses on Christians and culture. And I'm about to ask you what you focus on and what you're paying attention to right now in culture, but with 7 kids and a set of twins most recently, right? You and your lovely wife have.
A year ago. Yep.
I would imagine that you're like changing diapers. That's what you're focusing on, and super silly songs, what me and my daughter watch on Amazon. But I know you're paying attention to things around you in culture. So can you tell us a little bit about what's on your heart and mind right now?
Yeah. So a lot of that for sure. The twins are, I have so much respect for parents of multiples. We had 5 in a row, and then we unfortunately had a couple of miscarriages, and then we had twins. And, I never knew, to all the people who have parented multiples, God bless you. You have patience beyond years, because I never knew how much more difficult it was, how different it was. And so there is a lot of that, but also within that, focusing on the family. And, as I mentioned before, the kids are all in grade school, but it's a very, very important time in our lives as we train them and teach them and spend time with them and be intentional with how we help them engage with culture. I think that, specifically right now, where we have kind of a reckoning when it comes to racial justice in our country, another one when we have a political season, that is about to come to a head here in November, when we have the issues with our health and the pandemic. There's so much in culture right now that our children are aware of, and that they need guidance and help with how to engage with. And so our focus as a family has really been on how Kirsten and I lead in that way, how we foster these conversations about politics or about race or sexuality. And even more than that, or maybe not more than that, but in addition to that, the issue of sanctity of life, the issue of abortion, that's come up a lot. And for us, that's been something that we've been involved with a lot, with supporting pregnancy centers and with the documentary that we put together. And, so I am, even amongst everything, I am aware of what's going on. Those are the things that we're focused on, but also I think not just for myself as an adult and as a citizen of the United States, but as a parent, we're focused on these issues because they will affect our children's lives, but also they affect our kids on an everyday level. And we as parents need to be aware of that and be open to listening and hearing from them, but also guiding them and always pointing them to truth, no matter what the culture is teaching them.
That's so good, Ben. And let's situate on the issue of life for a second. So, I mean, you are a passionate and consistent advocate for life. I mean, I've gotten privileged to see that up close and personal when we traveled up to your former hometown, your former residence, I guess I should say, in Baltimore, and placing an ultrasound machine there. Recently, you produced this film with your beautiful bride called Divided Hearts of America. And so, like, help our audience understand why is this issue and human dignity overall, why is it so important to y'all? And why is it God is leading y'all to continually speak in this direction?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the second part about why God is leading us, other than I feel like, everyone has a role in this to some respect, whether it's speaking out loud publicly like we do, or whether it's simply in, our interpersonal conversations and just the way we live our lives. It's important. But God has provided several opportunities for us to engage in, with the ultrasound units, which, that was a seed that was planted several years ago. When we had our first child, Grace, she's 11 years old now. And I remember sitting there watching a 3D, 4D ultrasound for the first time, and she yawned. I saw her yawn on the screen, like in utero, she yawned. And we all know that yawns are contagious. And so I yawned watching her yawn while she was in utero, which was crazy to me. And then we walked out of there, and Kirsten says, I would love to have the opportunity to provide this service for other women at some point, and then fast forward several years later, and joining with the ERLC and joining with Focus on the Family and their ultrasound program, we've been able to supply, ultrasounds in different places where we've lived. And so you just never know where the seed God plants in your spirit, where there's going to be someone else that has that same desire, and you can connect to do the things He has called you to do. And so, for us, people ask a lot of times, why is this so important? I think that, first of all, as believers, and even if you're not a believer, it still holds true. We as human beings bear the image of our Creator in Genesis 2 it talks about. And so we are His image bearers, and because of that, our lives have value. And there's a distinction between our lives as human beings and the lives of the other creation. And so the sanctity of life, protecting life, and especially when we talk about the most vulnerable lives among us, which are lives in the womb, it's important all the way from conception until natural death or death period. Also, I feel like this is a justice issue. And, for me personally, I've always been concerned with things that were not just. I remember growing up and, my father loved Civil War history, and we talked a lot about enslavement of Africans. We talked a lot about abolition. I remember visiting, different Civil War battlefields and always having this desire to free people and being so appreciative, especially living right now and seeing where our country has come when we talk specifically about slavery and abolition and Jim Crow and all those sorts of things that we've gone through. And just to see where we've come from, I feel personally that I don't want people to be subjugated or marginalized in that same way. So whether it's the young woman or young girl or young boy that is being sex trafficked, whether it is someone who is dealing with poverty locally, domestically, or internationally, whether we're talking about some sort of abuse, and yes, whether we're talking about abortion, I feel like, I feel like I want to be involved to advocate for those who may not have a voice to defend themselves.
Well, Ben, you may not know the answer to why the Lord raised you and your wife up, but we sure are glad that he has raised y'all up to be an advocate in these ways, just because of y'all's faithfulness, and we know that's to God's glory, and because of how well-spoken y'all are, and just how you represent believers standing for life in such an amazing way. And you talking about your firstborn, the ultrasound, reminded me, we have a little boy, my husband and I, on the way due in January.
Well, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Not 7. We're nowhere near 7, though.
Hey, well, you got to start off somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Goals.
Goals,
Right?
yes.
Goals.
Hashtag goals. But we had our anatomy scan, and it looked like our little boy was smoking cigarettes in the womb, but actually we found out it's blowing bubbles. So,
oh, wow.
But look, we have a picture of it. It's hilarious. I'm sure we'll hold that over his head. But it is amazing that the technology that we have. So speaking of your family, so you were a professional football player, and in so many ways you modeled what it looks like to be a faithful Christian in the public eye. And I know you probably would give your wife a huge shout out here, but can you tell us how you sought to balance faith and your family and a professional football career?
Yeah, I think that, for us, for Kirsten and I, it's the only life that we've known. And so, we met, I was playing football at University of Georgia. She was in softball, and we met actually in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And we were kind of in the friend zone for a while. Then we kind of made it official. And then, we were married for 15 years now. We got married after my rookie year. And so, our entire life has been, moving around and, game days, Sundays being game days, and kind of having our whole life predicated and scheduled around professional football. That was just, that was my occupation. That's what we did. And so for us, we never really thought about it as, you're on such and such a platform, whatever that is, and how do you balance faith? Because, your faith is who you are. You're a new creation. And so whatever you do for your occupation, it's not a balancing act, because you bring the entirety of who you are to wherever you go. And whether I'm working in a locker room and on a field, or whether I'm working in an office building, or whether I'm at home, the idea of being integral or having this sort of integrity is that the different parts of your life match up. And we don't do that perfectly at all, but that's the goal. And so, just trying to be authentic. I think one of the biggest things, whether it's the NFL or whether it's Microsoft or anywhere in between, people want to see authenticity. They don't really want to see perfection. And by the way, we're not going to be perfect. So there's no point in striving to act like you are. What people want to see is someone who is authentic in their walk, meaning that they truly believe the things that they say, and they strive to live that way. And that when they mess up, they say, you know what, I messed up and I need forgiveness. I think people really are attracted to that. And in my experience, in our experience, being in a locker room when I was a young player, and then especially as I become an older player, which, in the NFL, once you get past 30, you're old, definitely in the NFL. Everybody looks up to you and calls you old man. But the players and the players' wives, the players' girlfriends that we've had an opportunity to be around throughout my career, the one thing we wanted them to say was that they're going to tell us the truth. We may not want to hear it, because they're going to try to live by the same truth. And they're going to be honest with their failures, but they're going to encourage all of us to try to attain the same high bar. And so that's how you live in whatever realm you're in. That's what we're called to do. That's how we're called to live. And then we're called to, take advantage of opportunity. And, the Lord provides more or less at different times. And as we talked about, the film and stuff, that was an opportunity that God presented. And it's something that we were doing while we were in the league, and that's great. And then there are times when there may not be that kind of outward expression of that. But whatever it is, whatever He's giving you to do, wherever you are, your goal is simply, and your job is simply to do your very best and be I guess, responsible with a good steward of what He's given you.
Okay, so Ben, this last question, man, it's a doozy. So prepare yourself. All right. So you've mentioned your playing career. And so whether it was balling out in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or at the University of Georgia, or just in several stops in the NFL, I mean, you made some highlights, and you also got the privilege to play with several Hall of Famers and several soon to be Hall of Famers. And that's where we're going for this last question. So Ben Watson, you're there on the line. And the game is on the line. Who do you go with? Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and why?
Where are we playing it?
Oh, come on, man. A 2-minute drill here in the Super Bowl. I mean, this is for everything.
Where's the Super Bowl at? Is it outdoor or is it indoor?
Oh, so you're getting that specific.
What's the
we were totally unprepared for this.
Yeah, totally unprepared for that, man.
I know you weren't, because I know you weren't. That's why I threw it out there. But that's how I address it. Because,
so okay, we'll go.
If I'm playing the Super Bowl, and it's a lot of times Super Bowl's in New Orleans, even though they're not it's not the Saints game. It's just, if I'm playing in a dome, and it's a shootout game, then it's Drew Brees. That's what he does, right? He's indoor. He's spread them out. He's throwing the ball left and right. He's dissecting the defense. If I'm in a struggle and it is snowing outside, let's say the Super Bowl's in New York, like it was a few years ago, and it's cold outside, I'm going with Tom Brady, because that's what he's done. And so there's different there's different circumstances for different players. I can say this. I can say that I've been so fortunate to play with both of those guys specifically, and as well as all the other phenomenal players that I've had a chance to play with. I mean, when you grow up wanting to play football, you think about playing in the Super Bowl, and you think about the guys that you're going to play with. And those are the things that you walk away with. Being able to play in 2 Super Bowls, both of them with Tom. We lost one, unfortunately, that would have been amazing. We'll never forget it. But all those other times of being in the locker room, like I remember times with Drew Brees and his family, and my family were kind of in the same, boat when it comes to kids. And so connecting with those guys off the field has been, probably more fulfilling, I would say, than even the times that we had on the field.
Well, I just have to say that's how you answer a question. And in this election year, like I know some presidential candidates that could take some notes from you on how to properly answer a question. That was fantastic.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
But they won't get any votes because it's not, scintillating enough. You gotta have it's a Twitter culture. You gotta, shoot at people.
Yeah, you say that, but man, I was on the edge of my seat there, so that was great.
Man, well, Ben Watson, we want to say thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate all the things that you shared. We're incredibly excited about the film that you guys have put together, and especially what you shared, about authenticity and integrity, about living the kind of life where everything holds together. That is exactly the message that so many of us need to hear about how to live lives where our faith and our lives are totally integrated like that in a way that is authentic and real and hopefully points people to Christ. And so thank you so much for taking the time to join us, but for being a model of what it looks like to follow Jesus and to point toward his glory and his kingdom with your life.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. And the film is actually streaming now on salemnow.com. People can go there and check it out, salemnow.com. It's available for streaming purchase there. So we're excited about it, and we appreciate the support from everyone, and really appreciate you guys, taking the time to allow me to join you. Thank you.
So now it's time for the lunchroom, where every week we tell you the things we've been talking about with one another. Lindsay, you're up first this week, so tell us what's on your mind.
Okay, this week I have 2 things. First is a new Christmas song that I found on social media by Francesca Battistelli, which she's a Christian artist, but the funny thing is that our old colleague, well, not old, former colleague, Dan Darling, who used to be my boss, he's like, man, I really like this artist. I like to listen to her with my kids. Francisco Battistelli. I'm like, what is she? I'm like, monk. So Francesca Battistelli, but she's got a new Christmas album coming out. She has this song called Behold Him, and it got me. Oh man, I was tearing up. And the story behind this song is really cool because she had it ready to go for last year for a Christmas EP, but she felt like the Lord was just stopping her from releasing it. And so they didn't release the EP either. And she didn't really understand why, but knew the Lord would use it. Well, come to find out, now she's releasing it this year. And we are in the midst of a pandemic, a year of great loss and heartache for people. And the song, the 2 verses are about, the first one is about a missing stocking hanging up on the fireplace because someone has died. And then the second stanza is about a man who has lost his job and has been without a job, not knowing how the Lord is going to provide. And then the chorus says, in your silent night, something like this, in your silent night, behold him, something about feel the thrill of hope. God is with us. Anyway, it's so moving. And I think it's going to minister to so many people in this season. And then the second thing is on the humorous side. So CNN had this article that was total clickbait for me, and I clicked on it, but it was so fun to click on. So this is about a lady who is a singer, and she has a TikTok account, and I think now Facebook, YouTube, and I don't know what else, something else. Anyway, but she sings, and she's Indian. I think she might be Indian American, but then her real, quote unquote, real Indian dad interrupts. You don't see him, but he interrupts her songs in the background. And it is hilarious because it reminds me of our Indian neighbors that we used to live next to. So she's singing about why you got to be so rude. You know that song where the guy's like going to the dad and saying, why I got to be so rude? I'm going to marry the girl. And the real Indian dad, while she's singing, is saying, no, you're not going to marry the girl. You're not Indian. Come back when you have a PhD. It's just as hilarious. You have to go and listen to these because they were cracking me up.
Well, Lindsay, I just want to commend you for bringing the spiritual to the podcast. A few weeks ago, my lunchroom, I shared that I had been watching through the Star Wars series. And so this is, again, nothing redemptive for you, but it is awesome. Every little boy who has ever seen Star Wars, like, wants to own a lightsaber. My son, like, I've bought him a couple different versions of lightsabers. Like, it's a thing for little boys who have watched and enjoyed Star Wars. Well, someone took that, like, next level and created a real lightsaber. And it's unbelievable. And so there's a YouTube video where this person, the guy who created it, is just walking you through these different iterations where they were trying to figure out what would it take to build a real retractable lightsaber. And this thing is intense. He even made, like, the Darth Maul version that has, like, the 3 different lasers in it or whatever. But it's a real retractable lightsaber that, who would want to make one of these? Because honestly, what an incredibly dangerous thing to have a hot laser-like object that is meant to be wielded like a sword. But there is one, it's real, and you can check it out.
It is pretty cool, Josh. I mean, I think every little boy and grown man would want a lightsaber.
I don't know if that was patronizing, but it is really cool. Like, as a Star Wars fan, and really,
I like Star Wars.
There you go. So, Brent, that's it for me. What's on your mind?
Yeah, that's going to make the Star Wars fans in our audience really happy. I would be scared to give my son an actual lightsaber, just because I'm sure that he would torment his older sisters with it. So the thing that caught my attention this week is a story from the Scientific American journal that was asking, are we living in a simulation?
Which was super trippy.
Yes. So, folks may remember as 2020 began, or maybe even before that, but this kind of internet meme was going around that, we're just living in some sort of computerized simulation, and the computer programmers are just seeing how crazy things can get by introducing new variables. Well, that actually was the hypothesis of a scientist going back to like 2003. I didn't even realize that. And the story says some have tried to identify ways in which we can discern if we are actually simulated beings. Others have attempted to calculate the chance of us being virtual entities. Now, a new analysis shows that the odds that we are living in base reality, meaning an existence that is not simulated, are pretty much even. But the study also demonstrates that if humans were to ever develop the ability to simulate conscious beings, the chances would overwhelmingly tilt in favor of us, too, being virtual denizens inside someone else's computer. So, I don't subscribe to this theory at all. I just thought it was pretty interesting to see where scientists will go with some of their theories, and the extent to which they will run computer programs and equations and algorithms to determine the likelihood. And basically the story ends with there's a 50-50 chance that we're actually living inside of a computer.
Well,
hey, we all have a friend who thinks we could be living in an alternative reality.
Like in the multiverse?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Right.
What this person says?
That's very true. Like, as Christians, we don't really worry or have any concerns about living in a simulation or any kind of other, alternate reality. But I can say, as a person who has seen the first Men in Black movie, do you remember the end of that movie where it's like showing you the Earth, and then it keeps zooming out and you see like the solar system and then the entire universe, and then you're looking, and then you see that it's actually inside of a marble that's being played with by an alien, because
right.
Space just goes on forever and ever. And it was, I've always gone, man, like that's a picture of how small we really are. And though I don't think we're being, we're not inside some kind of marble that is being played with by an alien, it does show you that the God who created everything is so much larger than us. And we really are, in a sense, insignificant specks, and we're only valuable because he says we are.
Ooh, yes.
There you go. Make it spiritual.
Thank you for wrapping that up on a theological high note, because that is where the Christian should read an amusing story like this, but ultimately come back to we are created by a sovereign God who is sovereign over everything, including computer simulations.
That's going to do it for the show this week. We want to say thanks so much, as always, for listening. And just as a reminder, you can find links to all the things we talked about today in the show notes. If you like the podcast, please consider helping us spread the word by sharing this episode on social media or going into your podcast app and leaving us a rating or review. But for Brent and Lindsay and myself, we want to say thanks so much for listening, and we will be back next week with more content.